I was born at the end of a boom and just before an invasion. I might have missed the invasion entirely had it not been for my 3 adolescent sisters who had been completely overtaken by the 4 conquerors. The sound of the occupying troops filled the house day in, day out. Of course, they weren't the only sound waves filling the house. There was also my father's big band and Frank Sinatra records, my mother's classical music, most notably the Reader's Digest Festival of Light Classical Music, which, as a toddler, I would fall asleep to in front of the hi-fi. Yes, the hi-fi. At some point in my childhood, though I can't remember when, it was discovered that I had a knack for drawing. My mother loved art, and my fledgling talent was nurtured by gifts of crayons, pencil crayon sets, and paint-by-number kits, which were supplemented later with watercolor sets and paper. No lines to fill and no numbers to follow, just blank paper. What I do recall, even from the earliest of times, is singing. Many were the trips I and my 6, soon-to-be 7 siblings take in the old Chevy. There were no radios in cars those days, only the drone of the engine, which I would happily use as the thorough-bass for my endless, wordless melodies. No doubt, everyone in the car was happy to finally get to the intended destination. My school report cards were remarkable in their consistency. I would consistently receive an A in art, which was a gift, and a D in conduct, which I considered a curse. As I grew, I continued to rely on the gift to win me friends and influence teachers. If I weren't drawing peace signs and paisleys for friends, I would be fulfilling a teacher's request for a bulletin board or a picture of Our Lady of Good Counsel. "But what does she look like?" I would protest. "It's okay, just draw her." I returned to that school years later, and there was Our Lady, still with that darn scuff mark where I made that one mistake that I couldn't correct. No happy accidents here. My high school experience included 3 years of visual arts. I was way too cool to take band. I was certain Paul McCartney never took band. Alas, I have regretted that decision to this day. Art was the one course I did well in, and looked forward to, even though I seemed to be creating an endless number of exercises demonstrating the elements and principles of design, when what I really wanted was to learn how to paint canvases. That, I was sure, was the key to art, not the menus for Spanish restaurants we were creating, though I loved my teacher dearly. The only art that was in any way fine was a print I did with battleship linoleum. I was sure the ship it came from was no battleship, but rather the Titanic, as it was the hardest stuff on earth to carve. It would put a diamond to shame. I recall the cool image I had in my head, compared to the finished product, which was so lacking, as I simply ran out of steam during the carving process. Still, I fell in love with the concept of printmaking, and it is why I consider myself a printer above all else. When it came time to decide what I was going to do after high school, I decided to apply to the Ontario College of Art. No design at this point in time, at least in name. I can still see the sun streaming through the windows of the auditorium where I had my interview. Can still see the other applicants with their beautiful canvases and mesmerizing drawings, startling in their contrast. Can a pencil really make black like that? I can still recall my cardboard portfolio with the guitar collage on the front, filled with meaningless pattern and geometric shape exercises, a menu for a Spanish restaurant, and a lone slide of a clay figure I had let harden and painted black. The two interviewers skimmed through my carefully prepared 2D exercises and squinting at my slide as they held it up to the light. I knew then that this had been an exercise in futility. I felt so small compared to the enormous talent that filled the other interviewing tables. And then it happened, almost as a throwaway question. Do you have any other interests? Well, I write music and sing and play guitar. My interviewer perked up, like he had finally discovered the tiny oasis in this desert of an interview, and said, "Well, music is art too, you know." I said, "Yeah, I know." Suddenly, I felt like I have one up on all these other people. I have two artistic talents. I remember gathering up my academic drawings and sculpture slide and leaving the interview with the slightest of hope. I just might have done it. My letter of rejection arrived a few weeks later, and I will always remember my art teacher being so ticked off, even though he hadn't offered me any advice about what to include in my portfolio, or that I should maybe print the picture of my sculpture rather than bring a slide. But I don't blame him. Soon after, he told me about a new visual arts cluster course at Centennial College. No interview necessary, just apply. I took the course for a year, had wonderful studio experiences and engrossing art history lessons. But music was beginning to take precedence over everything. I left college to study music, and the rest isn't history, just my story. Music is what I do most now, but art was my first love. And you know what they say about first loves.